Welcome to Coach's Corner, everyone. Thanks for watching the show. I'm your host, Coach Tripp. To my left, to my right, to the right on your screen, my old high school teammate, Billy Pendock, All-American at Syracuse. And we are in the four-wheel drive. Forgot to put it on the screen, but it's Wednesday night, so it's four-wheel drive. We talk about virtues, how to be a great coach, how to be a good leader, how to be a great captain. And we talk about all sorts of subjects here on the show. This is brought to you by Sandy Sansing Chevrolet and all my great sponsors out there. Here on Coach's Corner, Billy, we try to inspire and educate the mind to think, the heart to feel, and the body to act. We're going to talk about humility today, Billy.
Yeah.
What it means. Why do you need to be humble? Why is it a virtue even? We'll talk about that, and then we'll talk about some stories on how we got humbled, whether it was welcome to big time college football or welcome to the NFL. We'll tell a story or two, but hang on and hope you enjoy this one. All coaches, whether it's youth, high school, college, or the pro level, they have an obligation to teach players how to lose with grace and win with humility. Nobody likes an arrogant person with a need to feed their ego. Let others brag about you. The teams who have humble, teammate-oriented players breed unity, not division. Arrogant or egotistical players are too worried about themselves at the expense of others. In other words, they don't put the team first. Their priorities are skewed. Their energy is spent on more yards, points, stats, attention, fame, notoriety, money, etc. There are a myriad of things they focus on instead of putting the team first. Putting your team first is loyalty to the team. And here are some things a coach should say to his players at practice to communicate a message of being humble and not getting the big head. For example, as a coach, when the scout team members have the dirty work to do, being the tackling dummy for the starters, I would tell the whole group, everyone on this team is equally important to the team. Nobody is bigger than the team. Not me, you, not anybody. And these scout team kids' jobs are just as important as a starter. Remember that. Well, I think it was because I spent over 2 years, Billy, and 220 practices on the scout team before I even got into a game at Alabama. That will humble you.
Yeah.
I have a few maxims and quotes that relate to this subject because I love stuff like that. Let me stress that these are life lessons more than team sports lessons. Talent is God-given. Be humble. Fame is man-given. Be man-given. Be thankful. Conceit is self-given. Be careful. Vince Lombardi also said the ego destroys the humility in a person. Much can be accomplished by teamwork when no one is concerned about who gets the credit. Billy, I think it goes back to character. How hard you work at correcting your faults reveals your character. The big ego player, he thinks he knows everything, so he says to himself, well, why work on things if I'm perfect? And that's a trap. When he faces adversity, he thinks so highly of himself that he rationalizes, makes excuses, points fingers, blames somebody else, and feels it's not him. This is a dangerous dead-end street, and as a coach, you're looking for the givers, not the takers. The arrogant and egoist doesn't understand what it takes to sacrifice. I think President Calvin Coolidge observed his observation was this: no person was ever honored for what he received. Honor has been the reward for what he gave. Think about it. He wasn't honored for what he took, but what he gave. A good example, I'll give you an example, Billy. A good example of someone who's humble and cares more about his teammates than himself was the great fullback Tony Richardson, Kansas City Chiefs. I read an article in Sports Illustrated. God, it had to be 15 years ago. And it was a great story about Tony and how he cared about his teammates. He was in his 17th year in the league. And the article goes on to say he wasn't especially big, 6'1", 230. He wasn't really fast or elusive, but what he offered was what he always offered. Those things that coaches call intangibles. He runs out all out every single drill. He speaks up when things need to be said in meetings. He visits teammates that are having a rough time. and he watches other players to see how he can help. Richardson is quoted as saying, quote, "It just means more to me to help someone else achieve glory. There's something about it that feels right to me." You know, every one of his teammates will tell you that Roll went beyond the crushing blocks he had. He would constantly talk to him throughout the game, telling Priest, Holmes, "Come on, man, we got this. There's always one thing more we got to do. We know exactly how to get through this." Teammate Larry Johnson said, "Whenever I felt frustrated, I'd go over to Tony's house. And he was never too busy to talk to me. We just shoot the breeze, but I always left there feeling better about myself." Well, Tony had empathy and a humble spirit, and that's a great example that your kids can learn and emulate. And as a coach, you should share these stories with players. I believe it is important to teach your kids how to be humble and how to respect the other team, because without them, you wouldn't be standing here tonight. And then I would reiterate that, Billy, but every single week. Let me give you the Bible verse to finish up. This comes from 1 John chapter 5, verse 15. God sends no one away except those who are full of themselves. God resisteth the proud and giveth grace to the humble. Yeah, it's powerful. It's powerful. So, and I think it's a coach's job as well as a parent before the coach and before the teacher, by the way. Let me get that in there. I think parents, have dropped the ball a lot of times on teaching a variety of virtues, including how to be humble. Billy, you want to give us a story on what humbles you? Maybe like a welcome to the college football world.
Yeah. I mean, first off, I want to say, we're talking, a lot of things popped into my head while you were talking, and if you watch sports now, you watch all sports, they talk about, guys having a chip on their shoulder, and that's good to a degree. You don't want to be so passive that, that you're getting pushed around out there, but you don't want to be that other side where you have no humbling characteristics and, to that effect. But, and I've been very fortunate to play with guys we had on this show. And a guy like that comes to mind is Craig Bingham, who, just a class act of a guy, that, you talk to him, we talked to him for 45 minutes and, had all the talent in the world, was a captain. It was everything. And the guy wouldn't stop anything he was doing and give me the time of day. And I was nothing coming in. And then on the other side, and I wish we could get Joe Morris on the show, because Joe is a prime example of that. Joe was at the top of his game, and you wouldn't know it, but if you talked to him, you wouldn't know if he was cleaning the floors or running for 200 yards in a football game. that kind of humble, a guy's guy, And on the other side of the coin, playing at Dallas my first year, I was ignored by everybody. You had these superstars that knew they were superstars, and I'm not going to name names, but very arrogant, very above everything. And they let you know it. And that was the other side. And, thinking back to my first humbling experience come in high school when we were sophomores playing on the varsity. And I'm out there on, at practice playing against guys that are 18, 19 years old and I never played a down to football. Never walked on a football field. That was my first experience. And I was sitting at home thinking, wow, what's going on here? I thought I was at least able to hang with these guys, but going on to college, it happened again right away. The first game of the year, we're playing the number one team in the country, Ohio State, down there at the Q, and I'm 18 years old as a freshman. There's 110,000 people. The second play of the game, George turns to me and says, "Get in the game," and I'm frozen, and I'm sure Blaze, if he was here, would tell you the same thing. All three of us, me, him, and Jamie, all played in that game as freshmen, true freshmen. And it was like being in a dream. And all I can remember is I didn't know if it was right, left. I didn't know what day it was. I didn't know what was going on. When I watched the film on Sunday, I couldn't even tell you who that guy was out there.
What did you get that? What grade did he give you in that game? Do you remember?
I just remember my right ear was ringing from he was on my right side, and his face was about this close to my ear, and he had a big chew in his mouth, and my whole side was full of tobacco juice, and, and the screaming that went on, and then finally he turned to the right, and Jamie was sitting on the other side of him, and he got his left ear full of the same thing. But you want to talk about under fire and humility, and then follow that game up by playing Nebraska, who you had Remington, Steinfeld.
Oh my God!
These guys are all Americans. Every guy in the front, and it was just that was and if that didn't give you humility, nothing would. And
holy cow!
And as we grew, and I'm going to say this: as we grew, me, Jamie, Timmy, Blaze, as we got to be juniors, seniors, I remember those lessons we got. They were lessons under fire.
Right.
Those were lessons that I swore I would never do to guys in practice that were behind me. We had freshmen who came in. And yourself, when you come in as a freshman, your eyeballs are that big. You're the range from high school to Division I football is enormous.
Yeah, good point, Billy. Those are great stories. You're exactly right. The jump from high school to college is so big. The jump from college to pros is not that big at all. And I'll tell some stories about that, but I'll tell a story about being humbled as well. And I can tell two stories from college. When I first got to Alabama, I was a Yankee walk-on, and there were 20 DBs in there, 14 scholarship guys, and about 6 or 8 walk-on DBs. So there were 20 DBs out there. Well, all the walk-ons in the 4th and 5th string guys, they would put them on the scout team against the number 1 offense if you're on defense. So people have to realize that they're throwing these kids into the wolves as blocking dummies. And I just got to Bama, and they just won back-to-back national titles in 78, 79. Wow. So when I got on the field, I kind of got thrown into the wolves in practice. They knew I wasn't ready for a game. It took me 2 years before I got into a game. But, they threw me against this number 1 offense. And, Billy, I was like, holy shit. These guys are so fast and so strong and so focused, man, and so disciplined. And I was flabbergasted by it. But you know what? It did the same thing for me. I learned so much by getting my ass killed that, I got better quickly. And that was my welcome, moment to college football was in practice. You got it in the game. I got it in practice.
It's when you think, and I talk to a lot of people, you think back, and they ask me this all the time. What was it like playing Ohio State? What was it like playing Nebraska? What guy did you play across from? And I'm telling you, if you talk to any guy that has had that experience, it's almost like it's a dream. It's just all mushed up in your head. You can't remember what you're thinking about practice, but it's all a big just a crazy sequence of what's going on.
Yeah.
But again, with and I was very, very fortunate to play with some in college. And again, we talked about the transition, and it's just incredible how much speed and how much of a difference in them ages. You think about 17, 18 to 25, 26. It's a maturity thing. And
well, I think about other center guys like Tony Richardson, like Craig Bingham. I think about those guys when I got to Alabama. Those guys were so tough and intense in practice, but off the field they were so nice and quiet and calm and helpful, and that hospitality that I felt, Southern hospitality, was real. Those guys were good people and would help you off the field, and on the field they would crush you, but they were just doing their job. And I learned real quick how to separate them. I'll tell you a funny, humble story. Coach Bryant humbled me. For his last year, I was in my third game of the season. We're playing Ole Miss at Ole Miss. And I was second string cornerback behind Stan Gay, another walk-on, as a matter of fact, who just came out with a book. Can't wait to read that. So Stan was in front of me, and Coach Bryant, it was in Jackson, Mississippi in early September. So it was like 120 degrees. And first quarter, Ole Miss was driving on us. So Coach Bryant, he said, damn it, everybody out. And he put in the whole second string. He would do that once in a while, right, to shock you, the whole second string. First play, they're at midfield. First play, I'm at right cornerback on our sidelines. Coach Bryant's like 10 yards from me. I'm covering the corner, okay? 3-step drop. I read the 3-step drop. I plant a T-plant, and I come up, and I break up the ball, man. I make a great play. Out come the flag. Said I was there early. Coach Bryant was so mad. Damn it, everybody out. he took the whole 9 guys out after just one play, and I got the penalty, man. I felt like digging a hole and crawling in it that day, man. Yeah. That'll humble you quick.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh. Hey Billy, I gotta mention this. We were talking about transition from college to pro, okay? And when I read the book Fourth and Goal Every Day by Phil Savage about Nick Saban, the practices at Alabama were notoriously hard, just like Coach Bryant's practices were notoriously hard, just like George O'Leary's practices were notoriously hard. Okay, one Alabama said our practices are tougher than the games, and it's a relentless pursuit of perfection. If there's a secret such as a thing to sustain success of a football program, in my opinion, it's the practices that they have. I remember when Jacob Coker came over from FSU to Alabama, and he says, I found out the intensity of Alabama practices when I transferred in 2014. I marveled at the obedience to practice hard, talking smack and having fun. If you didn't join in, it's hard to survive. Your attitude must be part of the ride and have fun, or else you're gone. You must be ultra competitive at Alabama. And that's exactly what former players say when they went to the NFL. Linebacker Dylan Lee said practices were a paradise compared to an Alabama practice.
Yeah. That's
that's, I think if you practice hard, you're going to play hard.
Yeah, and while we're on that subject of the transformation to high school, to college, Division I college, I remember, and we got probably 20 scholarship guys, and you're talking about 80% of those guys being the shit at their college, at their high schools, and they're walking in here. You want to talk about humility? Now this is, back then. It was very rare to see true, even now, to see true freshmen get on the field. And, and you either, and to your point, you either sucked up that ego and you became humble your first year, or you disappeared, because
right.
you had 20, 22 guys that had huge egos, because they ran their high school. They ran whatever state they were in. They were and I can't tell you how many All-Americans that came in with me at Syracuse. There was guys that had their towns named after them. They were
Wow.
they were phenomenal players, and guys running backs that were 16 over 6,000 yards in a career, in a high school career, and they walk in the door. Now they're fifth or sixth on the depth chart. They got Joe Morris in front of them. They got Art Monk in front of them. And that's a hard thing up here to deal with.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's a psyche thing. You're right, Billy. I go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Think about how, if you think back and you think about how much you get built up out of high school. And we've all been there when you're coming in as, with the expectations with this and that. And all of a sudden, and I got one great story for you before we finish. If we finish, I got one more. I just thought of it.
Okay.
So I'm coming out of Liverpool and I'm getting recruited by all over the country. Now my head's going, it's getting bigger and bigger, man. And next thing you know, Neil Kerr sits down with me down in my basement. The true story. I'm going into my senior year at Liverpool. He says, he goes, we talked about Syracuse, we talked about Penn State, we talked about if you pick Syracuse, he goes, your first game is against Ohio State. He goes, think about what that game is like. He goes, you're going to be playing against Art Schlichter, who is an all-American quarterback. He's up for a Heisman Trophy, this, that, the other thing. What's your thoughts on that? And me being a ball buster that I am, and my head's growing this big, and I'm getting patted on the back at high school, and you're this, you're that. I said, shit. I go, Neil, that's going to be like a picnic. I just said it. I just set it off key, not thinking anything was going to happen. It's just a stupid 17-year-old kid saying something to a reporter. Right. Fast forward, I'm at Syracuse. The first day on campus, they had red picnic. They had red tablecloths that were like picnic tablecloths laid all over the place. And the trainer come out and goes, well, you're going to have a picnic, huh? And that's all I heard for all of camp was about a picnic. And
my gosh,
my head went right back down, right back. I went right back in the shell. And you talk about getting slapped in the face, humility. That was incredible. Man.
Wow, Billy. Yeah, that does slap you. It brings you back to a realization. It humbles you, or you go the other direction. Like you said, your ego is so big it can't take it. You can't take the shame. You hide from it, and then you disappear. That's what happens to a lot of them. And, I mean, when I got to Alabama, man, I was a small fish in a huge pond. And I would, at Liverpool, I was all state and football, basketball, golf, and then when I go to Alabama, and I'm just way down on the depth chart, fifth, sixth string. I'm behind other walk-ons from Alabama. I mean, it was humbling. It was humbling to say the least, man. I played JV, played in the JV. We had JVs back then.
The question I'm gonna put to you, and I would put to anybody in that situation, because I was there with you. We graduated the same time. When you arrive, you're slapped in the face with humility and humbling. How do you deal with it? And we've all had sitting in the room. We've all been there. We've sat there and said, "This is, I could easily go home. I could easily quit."
Right.
I mean, it's a shocker, but
I don't know. I don't know, Billy. I had support. From my family, friends. My first wife was supportive, and kept me straight and on the narrow down there. And I think, I just wanted to, I didn't want to go home in shame. I didn't want to, because I had people told me, oh, you'll be back. So went to Rice University and never came back, and I was like, well, it was like, I didn't want to say I didn't have much wisdom back then, but I did have something telling me, what if I'm 65 years old and I didn't try to play at a place like Alabama? I would regret it. Right. And so I think it was a little bit of wisdom and a little bit of burning desire that kept me going, because it was a hard road, man. It was harder than most people. And I was humbled by it. And to this day, I'm thankful and grateful for it.
Right. You think of that when, you think of your freshman year, and you think of how many guys got on that bus and left. I mean, the percentage is overwhelming. It's just incredible.
Yeah, it is. You think about it, just to get on the field at Syracuse or Alabama is an accomplishment, because I don't know how you did it, man. I have no idea how you played so early. There was a pecking order at Bama, and rightfully so. I was not ready to play at Alabama when I was a freshman. Are you kidding me? It would have crushed my career and ruined my spirit and my confidence and everything else. They knew what they were doing, but you guys had to persevere through the fire, man. I mean, I got it when nobody else.
Yeah, a lot of it back then was not. It wasn't because we were who we were. It was more, we were players. Don't get me wrong. All four of us were players, but it was a matter of circumstance at the time. We were down a little bit on the D line. We were at guys, but we needed fillers, and it was, in your case, you had those spots filled. Those spots were secure for the most part.
Right.
In my situation, and Frank Maloney told me this before I signed. He said, "You're going to play as a freshman, unless you're really a bust." But and I say this to everybody I talk to. It's not. They say the same thing you did. Wow, how did you four guys play as freshmen? That don't happen. That doesn't happen. And I don't stand there and say, well, I was a great player. I was this, I was that. There was no way they were going to keep me off the field. It was necessity. If I had to say 80% was necessity.
Yes.
Were we ready? No, absolutely not. We weren't ready, but that was success under fire.
George, you guys all became All-Americans and played in the NFL, so it worked out right. And George knew what he was doing to have the team that you guys did in the mid and late '80s. All right, Billy, thank you so much, man.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being on the show. I want to thank everybody for watching. On behalf of my old high school teammate Billy Pendock, I'm Coach Tripp. Stay tuned for these.
Shout out to Blaze. Blaze, hope everything's okay. Blaze, we're thinking about you.
Yeah, brother. Yeah, come back soon, brother. We miss you, and we'll talk to you soon. Everybody, thanks for watching the show. Stay tuned for these great messages. Without these sponsors, this just wouldn't be possible. So long, everybody.
When it comes to buying your next car, truck, or SUV, you need a team that puts you first. Here at the Sandy Sansing dealerships, we're proud to serve Pensacola and the Gulf Coast with the best selection, trusted service, and deals that work for your family. Just like great coaches build great teams, Sandy Sansing builds lasting relationships with every customer who walks through our doors. Because when it comes to finding your next vehicle, there's only one name to remember. Sandy Sansing can.
75 years of service and high tech today. It's Pensacola Glass Company at 433-8348. High tech is a term often applied to advanced services and products in today's marketplace. And today, glass is much more than a simple pane of brittle, see-through stuff we hit baseballs through when we were kids. Glass is now a product with unique flexibility in both performance and application. And Pensacola Glass Company is growing right along. That's Pensacola Glass Company at 433-8348.
Are you riding around in a filthy vehicle? Dirty car no more. Visit Ronnie's Car Wash today to get it shining in no time. They have 3 convenient locations with another coming soon. The unlimited monthly wash packages start as low as $14.95 per month with free vacuums, multi-purpose spray and towels. Visit them in Gulf Breeze, Navarre, Fort Walton, and soon Crestview. Don't wait, wash today. Be sure to see Ronnie's Car Wash on Facebook to see the latest specials and discounts. You'll be riding and shining in no time.
My name is Steve Reynolds. I'm the manager and owner of Cordova Lanes, and we help keep your mind out of the gutter. Cordova Lanes is part of the community of Pensacola. Being here for 43 years, we've entertained more people than any other bowling center in the city. We self-fund for a living. Cordova Lanes is located at 2111 Airport Boulevard in Pensacola, behind Cordova Mall. Come on out and see us at Cordova Lanes Bowling Center. Thank you.
Over 30 years, you have seen the orange Beck signs all over the Gulf Coast listing a property for sale or lease. Beck Partners is your trusted advisor in commercial real estate, property management, commercial and personal insurance. Senior Vice President David Valletto has been with Beck Partners since 1989. Take advantage of his wealth of knowledge by calling him today at 982-7352. 982-7352. Extensive experience in all aspects of leasing, sales, management, and site selection will make sure your expectations are exceeded.